Oh, what a game last night in Philly as we welcome you into Get Me the Brandy, Hailey Hunter alongside Penguins team reporter Michelle Crechiolo. Mish, great to have you on. You're in Philly with the team right now. You got to be a part of all of the chaos last night. 50 minutes I counted of penalties, Flyers with 28 of those. Are you surprised at all by the way things went, or is that just kind of Penguin Flyers in the playoffs?
Yeah, it does feel like typical Penguins Flyers in the playoffs. I was thinking back to 2012 and Peter Laviolette and Tony Granato standing on their respective benches, yelling at each other and chaos everywhere. So it's definitely typical of this rivalry. And, but, I think it's something that the Penguins definitely don't want to get sucked into. And unfortunately, that was the case in that last game. So, just tough to see there from the Penguins' perspective.
Yeah, it really felt like the Pens had the momentum on their side. They finally scored a power play goal to start the game. They go into the first period. They're getting some chances at the beginning of the second period. But then, Brian Rust, Travis Konechny, they kind of go at it a little bit. How much do you feel that was kind of the turning point of the game? Because, Flyers go on to score 3 goals in 6 minutes right after that whole sequence.
Yeah, the start of the game was definitely exciting because it felt like the Penguins did exactly what they wanted to do. They were building on that third period they had in game 2 where they were on their toes, they were aggressive, they were dictating the terms, which they hadn't done really for extended stretches in those games at home, and they were just shot out of a cannon, Haley, to start that second to start game 3, which was super exciting to see, especially in that building, like, oh my gosh, like, I feel like I had to take deep breaths just being in that environment. It really is so hostile, and, I was thinking to myself too that it's the first road building we've been to that there haven't been, like, the stew fans from Penguins fans that are in the building. It's just such a, hostile environment. So, the Penguins handled it so well at the start, and they were doing everything right, everything they wanted to do, and so that just makes it even more frustrating when the game got away from them the way it did. And Brian Rust, I feel like he had every right to be frustrated in that scenario, to get elbowed in the head, and then for connecting to be trying to kick him, and so he, and emotions are high. The Penguins had lost 2 games, so it was just it was a lot of chaos, and it was just one of those things too. It took forever to get sorted out. We're sitting up there and we're trying to figure out what's going on, and the referees are talking to each other at the penalty boxes, and guys eventually started skating around like Crosby, Evgeny Malkin were trying to stay loose. They were, just trying to take some laps to keep the blood moving so they wouldn't get too cold. And, Stuart Skinner standing back there, like trying to stay in it. And, next thing you know, every single player that was on the ice was in the box, and it was standing room only for Bulls. And Eric Carlson said afterward he'd never seen anything like that in his 17 years and didn't fully understand what was going on. I think that was, part of it too, is that no one had any clarification about what was happening. And I think
Yeah.
that was another thing too. You saw Brian Russ like kind of leaning out, trying to, get the rest attention to be like, hey, like what's going on here? And he said he didn't hear anything. Dan Mew said he didn't get much of, an explanation either. So it was just a lot going on, and even the PA announcer was like, starting to go through the penalties, and he's like, "Here's the penalties, we think." So everyone was just, you
That's
know,
hilarious.
yeah, it definitely gave everyone a good laugh, but and just looking down at the boxes and seeing every single player in there on both sides, regardless of their involvement. I mean, like both teams came together to be sure, like there were helmets and gloves and sticks everywhere because they're just trying to, either help protect their guys or help guys away from their guys. So, everyone
Yeah.
was there, but not necessarily doing a whole lot. So it was just, I think talking to the guys afterward, they said it was more kind of the standing around and waiting that really kind of took them out of their game as well, in addition to all of the, emotional chaos and frustration that they were feeling from that situation.
Right. It's almost like a starting pitcher in baseball having a rain delay and having to come back out. Like you have all the momentum and you have to wait for what 10, 15 minutes to figure out what the heck is going on. But with that, did you actually see Rusty's response as he was skating away after the little encounter and how he kind of embraced the fans.
I
So
did
they showed
not.
it
That's
on TV.
awesome.
They showed it on TV, and he was just a bunch of nods and like laughing and going like this at the fans, and it was pretty funny. It kind of reminded me of like his own little flair on Max Talbot's "Shush" over there, and so I got to ask him about that. But it was pretty funny. Maybe looking back, he wouldn't have done that if he knew that they were going to score 3 goals after that. But it was pretty funny. But were you surprised that Konechny didn't get an extra penalty himself like Rusty did? Because that's something that Muse was not happy about.
Yeah, totally. And I understand the referees are human and they don't see everything happen so fast and in real time. And it's easy in hindsight to say like they should have gotten that call. But yeah, I was surprised. I know Brian Russ was surprised as well that he was the one that came away with the extra call after all of that. So it just piles on to, it feels like players have been getting the calls, all series long. And but it's one of those things that you can only control what you can. And easier said than done in this type of scenario. And obviously with the situation the way it is, it's understandable that the emotions boiled over for the Penguins. And for the Flyers to then score on the power play was just you kind of just felt like that was the only way it could go in that building. And just the way this series has been tracking, just a really tough moment for the Penguins there.
Yeah, it was. And you really felt like after that first goal that, hey, this is a good start. Like they could win this thing tonight. How nice was it to see them finally break through on the power play? Because I remember talking to Jay Caulfield during the pregame show. I'm like, for us to get the win tonight, for the Penguins to get the win, like how perfect if they could just not only score 5 minutes into the game, but have it be a power play goal because it has been tough to watch the power play as of late. Nice to finally see that breakthrough.
Yeah, and it's definitely been such a big storyline the last however long. And it's crazy too because they were so consistently good all season long on the man advantage for the most part. I mean, I know there were dips here and there, but with these Penguins, it does feel like a lot of times it is super volatile. But this group under Todd Nelson seemed to be able to keep it more even keel all year long and just kind of deliver consistently. And so for it to kind of just fall off a cliff in a way where they weren't scoring, they weren't generating momentum, just not doing what they want to go out there and do. It was difficult to see, and it was kind of head scratching. So it was awesome to see them finally break through in that regard, and to get them on the right page and set the tone for the period. I mean, Ricard Raquel had
Yeah.
told me yesterday that they need to just do a better job of establishing pressure and work help each other create chances. And that first goal, that was all it was Brian Russ getting in, winning possession, working it to Raquel, who finds Crosby, who goes back to Russ, tic-tac-toe over to Malkin at the side of the net. And it's like, yes, like this is what we're used to seeing
There
from
you
these
go.
guys. Exactly. And for Carlson to get one later. And there's a lot of talk about how obviously the game did turn on that sequence in the second period, but they were still within striking distance. Stuart Skinner had made some good saves to really keep them. They were still in it, and to get that power play goal, I mean, they got within one from Eric Carlson, but just couldn't find any else to really get the train back on the tracks after it got derailed there in the second.
Can you feel it? Springtime hockey is on the horizon.
We've been waiting for this, right?
They score! That's why you play the game right there, man.
You can see they know they have a chance against anyone in the league.
Look at this guy. He's on a mission.
Everybody step up and just play right.
These Penguins will not quit. This team is special. There's something going on here. You gotta believe in the boys in black and gold.
You mentioned like the personality. We saw a lot of lineup changes yesterday. I'm just curious, what was kind of the response to that at morning skate? Were you surprised by that? The other media members, were they surprised to see the changes that took place?
Yeah, it's you know how it is, Hailey, too. Where, like you're tracking the guys as they get on the ice, and just like, okay, everybody's here, and then line rushes are typically the first thing they do after they get all situated and everyone's accounted for. And so we truly, I felt like I was on the edge of my seat. Like, what are they going to look like? How are the coaches
This
going to
person,
adjust
this
these?
person, and yeah.
Exactly. And like the players in black jerseys are on one end, players in yellow jerseys are on the other end. So top six is in black and bottom six is in yellow. And so yeah, you see them start to go, and you're like, okay, Raquel, Crosby, Russ, that makes a ton of sense. They were, reunited at the end of the last game. Makes a lot of sense there. But then the second line and the third line, I think understood what they were doing in terms of Anthony Mantha going on that second line. So familiarity there. But yeah, to have Chinikov with Ben Kindle and Justin Brazeau, you wonder, are they just trying to maybe free up Chinikov from some of the tougher matchups? Because it wasn't something we had seen before. I think, I personally would have loved Chinikov with Malkin, with Tommy Novak, because they did have some really good stretches throughout the season. And you just know Chinikov and Malkin have that familiarity. They have that friendship. They have that chemistry. So you kind of want to see that together. But it's also, too, one of those things where you're trying to get all these individual guys going and trying to, what might be good for Chinikov might not be good for Mantha, and, on and on and on you go. So, you're trying to get the most out of guys within this team structure. And the coaching staff just felt like that was the configuration they wanted to go with. But Dan Hughes was asked about it today, like, why haven't you gone with Malkin, Novak, Chinikov? And he said, look, like, we're trying all these different combinations. We know that, there's combinations that have had success in the past, and nothing's off the table for game 4. They have to go out and win that game. So I'm sure we'll see at practice tomorrow if that group is reunited.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, we knew they were probably going to change the top 2 lines, but to change 3 of the 4 lines, I think we were all kind of surprised. And Jay, Matt, and I were talking. We agree. We really thought that Chinikov would stay with Malkin. I mean, even in game 2 in the third period, they immediately got put back together. And it just seemed like, I know there was more urgency. They were down. They had urgency to try and tie the game up, but it just felt like those two picked up right back up where they left off. But hey, third best offense in the league for the Penguins. It's crazy. Like, how did we get here to where they've only scored 4 goals in the first 3 games? Just from your perspective and the Flyers defensively keeping things tight, what have you seen from them? Why is it so hard for this Penguins team that we were spoiled with all season long to score right now?
Oh, I know, Hailey. It feels like that's been the most difficult part of this entire series. Is it just doesn't it's not the Penguins team we've been watching all season long, and in a few different, and the goal scoring is definitely one of them. And you're just, and I will say, huge Rick Tocchet fan. I had the privilege of working with him during those Stanley Cup runs in 2016 and 2017, and he is just the most awesome guy and an awesome coach. And so, a ton of credit to him for, putting his team in a configuration that the Penguins are struggling to break through that 1-1-3. I mean, you watch them just get into formation, and, it's one of those things, you move through the neutral zone past the first 2, but then it's just a wall of Flyers at that blue line. And, even just trying to chip it past and dump and chase, as they haven't really just been able to really get to work the way that they want to against these guys. And it's so easy to say that, like, oh, you just got to bear down and get bodies there. And, easy for me to say, but that really is just what they have to do, because, Dan Vladar is a good goalie, but it's hard to stop what you can't see. And they just haven't gotten enough, enough traffic there, even on the power play. I think that was something, watching them going into this last game, is they were all lined up around the perimeter, and no one was there at the blue paint. Just, they'd get there eventually, but it took a while. And that's just so, out of character for a power play, not to have someone, camped out, just trying to make life harder on the opposing goaltender. So, just kept to the perimeter a lot. But it's one of those things, the Penguins know exactly what they need to do. It's just a matter of going out and getting it done. And, it starts with game 4, just one game. Can't think about the stakes or, just the mountain they have to climb. They just have to start taking some steps and do what they can to try to chip through that structure that the Flyers have. But, I will say too, Penguins have played them, a few times throughout but felt like they really came into this identity later on down the line. not necessarily early on in those, matchups in December and January. I mean, the Flyers had what, like, I think 3.8% is the number they have on their playoff shirts, which was their
Wow.
odds not that long ago to make the playoffs. And they came together really quick into this nuanced identity. And so, maybe it was a bit of a surprise for the Penguins coming in. It's one thing to watch it on video. It's another to really see it in action. And, it's just been the matchup's been really tough sledding for the Penguins here.
Totally. I mean, I know everyone's saying Penguins are the better team coming into the series, but when you have a team, like you mentioned, that new identity that's hot, has been the best team since the Olympic break, the last 7 weeks consistently of the regular season, like that's not going to be easy. They may be top 5 in the playoffs right now, hardest team to go up against. I wanted to ask you though, as a former Spartan yourself, how about this 19-year-old Porter? I mean, I've been wanting to ask you about Martone, like, what was his 10th NHL game when he came into the playoffs? Scores the game-winning goal in the first 2 games. You got to be pretty proud of him. Of course, you want the Penguins to win, but you got to be pretty proud of your alumni.
It's funny, Hailey, that you say that, because on one hand, I am thrilled to see, a Michigan State Spartan doing well, but I'm also bummed out because him playing for the Flyers at this point means Michigan State did not have the season they were looking for. And I actually had a few of my college teammates and friends in town the weekend that Michigan State lost in the Frozen Four to Wisconsin. They were up going into the third period, and the Badgers just rallied, had this incredible comeback, knocked the Spartans out of the tournament, opened the door for Porter Martone to join the Flyers, play a huge part in getting them to this point. He's having a phenomenal series. And so I'm like, not only did Michigan State lose, this kid, this Spartan kid is playing a big part in, like playing the Penguins hard and, helping the Flyers win games and the Penguins being down in the series. So I feel like it's bittersweet watching Porter Martone for sure.
It's crazy. You're just 19 years old. You not only is it like you're coming in the beginning of the regular season, but the guy is just basically going straight to the playoffs and finding success. So yeah, you don't see that all the time. We've seen college players try to make the jump, and he's just making it look really easy right now. Well, we were looking at the odds right now for the Penguins per moneypuck.com. Obviously not in their favor, 6.2% chance of coming back. But hey, you just mentioned the Flyers percentage lower than that to even make the playoffs. What was the stat? Vegas odds makers 10% chance of the Penguins making the playoffs. So like they've proved people wrong before, but just 4 times in NHL history have teams been able to come back from a 3-0 series deficit. Here's a look at it right here. 1942, Toronto beating our Red Wings. 1975, the Isles beating the Penguins. 2010, Flyers beating the Bruins, and you and I would remember this one more, 2014, Kings beating the Sharks. So you kind of touched on it a little bit, but just for you, what's the most important thing the Penguins got to keep in mind in just flipping the script, as we've been saying, the tagline right now for the Pens, and getting it done on Saturday?
Exactly. Yeah, it could be setting the scene for the most epic flip the script yet. I mean, it definitely can be done. And Stuart Skinner, talking to him yesterday, like he's been a part of teams that have, his Oilers went down 3-0 to the Panthers in the 2024 Stanley Cup final and forced a Game 7, which they ultimately weren't able to win, but did, make a huge push to get themselves back in the series and make it a winner take all, Game 7. So there's guys in there who have seen that. And I really do think that maybe this is what the Penguins need. They were fueled all year by the external expectations, not being high, but they had belief the entire time from the hiring of Dan Muse back in June to training camp. Like Dan Muse talked to the guys and said, like, here's what everyone's saying, but that's not what I see. And this team can be a good team. And so maybe they just need that mentality. And they also need the mentality of like, you just gotta take it one shift at a time. Like, do not think about what's at stake here, because you will, get daunted, you will get overwhelmed, like you will feel that pressure. You just truly have to go out, try to win your shift, get on the bench, get some water, take a breath, go back out, win the next shift, play for each other. I think that's something too. This team has such a great dynamic, and they've been so much fun to cover, as you know, Hailey. It's truly been a blast. And so you want it to keep going. They want it to keep going. As Eric Carlson said, like in October, you would have paid good money to even be in this position, even though being down 3-0 is really hard. It's still like we're still in this. No one thought we could be here. We have a chance. So they just kind of keep that belief in themselves and really shut out the noise, because they've let it seep in, I think, through this series. And as Ricardo Raquel was saying, like it really has just been mental for them in a lot of ways. So they just got to dig deep. They're a veteran group. They know it needs to be done. It's just a matter of going out and executing.
I think most people would expect, being down 3-0 in the series, that it was probably a negative vibe in the Penguins locker room. But Stu Skinner touched on this when he came. Remember, he was saying he was so impressed by just how positive everybody was in the room, despite going through a really bad stretch when he joined the team. Was that kind of the vibe that you got last night? Were you surprised at all by the positivity in the room?
I wouldn't say surprised. I think there was definitely some anger, some frustration, which, coming out of, they literally walked down the runway and went into the room and had to have all these cameras and media in their face, just sort of asking about everything that just transpired. But like, I felt like there was, especially from Stuart Skinner, he is just like the epitome of calm and, amongst chaos. So I felt like he gave a really good perspective. Eric Carlson as well. Like, it's one of those things too, like we walk in and everybody goes to Brian Russ, everybody goes to Sidney Crosby, and Eric Carlson just sat in his stall and was like, I'm willing to wait. I'm willing to speak, just about everything that happened here. And he gave some like fantastic perspective. And you walked out of there just feeling pretty good, knowing that it feels like they're going to be in the right space. And even today, it's an off day for the team, but just hearing that, guys seem to be in as good a spirits as you can be, considering the situation. So, and it's something too, I feel like the Penguins plan that Kyle Dubas outlined when he first came over, they've stuck to that plan so well. They've executed on that plan so well. They got to this position without really sacrificing a whole lot. They have so many draft picks. They found some great young players and Igor Chinikov, and obviously, drafting Ben Kindle. So they're kind of playing with house money in a way. So it's one of those things that like to be here without having to give up a whole lot is an exciting prospect. And so that's one of those things too, you kind of have to keep in mind, is that, the Penguins are on a good path. They have phenomenal leadership with Kyle Dubas, and it trickles on down throughout, the coaching staff, the regular, the staff, the players, everybody involved, everybody's invested, everyone's doing their part. So they're in a good spot in the grand scheme. And now it's up to the players to go out and just try to keep this thing going as long as they can. And I think that, they're ready and willing to do it. And having 2 days, I'm sure like in a lot of ways, they want to just get back out there and start playing and just try to get back on track. But I do feel like having a couple days here to just regroup, get your heads on straight, just take some deep breaths, and then get back out for game 4. You know what the environment is. You experienced it last night. You know how hostile it's going to be. Now you're fully prepared for whatever they're going to throw your way. And, let's go out there and win a shift and just keep stacking shifts and try to get the job done. So, it's an exciting time, Hailey. We'll see if they can flip the script and, pull, like the Flyers went down from 3.8%. Let's see if the Penguins can find their way back from 10%. They have the bodies in there. They can do it. It's going to be hard, but they can do it.
I love your perspective on things. Well said. The future is certainly bright for the Pens. But with that, they've been proving people wrong all season long. So hopefully a couple days to really sit on this will kind of spark something for game 4 on Saturday. But hey, you have a couple days in Philly as well. I know there's a lot of prep involved for work, but when you get away from the office work, do you have any plans? I'm guessing the weather's nice.
Yeah, the weather is gorgeous. It's like 75 degrees and sunny, which is I think that should help too, get everybody in like really good spirits going into game 4. And yeah, it's sometimes I feel like I forget that Philadelphia is, it's all part of Pennsylvania. It's all part of, it just feels like a totally different world sometimes, but it's such a historic city and there's so much to do here. So definitely going to try to take advantage of, everything that's around. I think we're going to go to the Magic Gardens.
Ooh.
It's not something I knew about before I started looking around, but it should be that should be a fun trip. And then all of the, like the Liberty Bell and Independence Hall, all of these things. I think we're going to try to squeeze in as much as we can outside of the, the working duties.
Sounds so fun. Yeah, I know when you work for the Penguins long enough and you're around Penguins fans long enough, you're kind of mentally trained to not like Philly. But okay, there are some beautiful things about the city. I'm so glad you get to enjoy it. And as I was telling you earlier, hopefully I'll be there at some point when it's warm. We're always there in the winter. So
Yes, exactly. Fingers crossed.
yes. Mish, it was so great to have you on. Look forward to the next time and enjoy the next couple of days. Hopefully the Penguins can figure it out in game 4 on Saturday.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah, hopefully we'll be back in Pittsburgh for game 5. And until then, thanks for having me.